to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with sports radio personality Bruce McGowan and Vern Glenn of CBS affiliate KPIX TV in San Francisco. Now, a few things we wanted to cover. One, do referees protect high-profile players such as Sidney Crosby? What do you think?
I think so. I think it's an.
I think they get more leeway. That's for sure. Yeah, they get
the.
They certainly get the borderline judgment calls. What do you think, Bruce?
No question. I mean, I was at the Warrior game the other day, and I was watching some of the calls that were made against the Warriors as opposed to the Spurs. The Spurs were getting a lot of benefit on those calls. Now, granted, I mean, Tim Duncan's been in the league forever, so maybe you make a little more allowances for him.
Protect his knees and just the fact that he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
I go with the great Ray Fosse on this one. He tells a great story. He was playing with the A's in the 70s, those mighty teams. And then he got traded, and then some judgment call or whatever like that. And he looks like, hey, man, I would have gotten that call in Oakland. And he goes, well, you're not in Oakland anymore.
It depends on who you play for, right?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are human beings. They're going to make mistakes because they've been watching and respecting these older players.
Well, especially quarterbacks. I mean, look at the rules that they changed. In fact, I was thinking about. Remember McMahon getting just slammed to the ground by Charles Martin, if I'm not mistaken, the Packers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it actually practically put him out of football because it dislocated. It did something to his shoulder.
Nasty hit.
Yeah. I mean, that one was that was obvious, but nowadays they protect the quarterbacks a little bit too much. We'll get into that.
Boy, if that happened today, boy, you get a little letter from the league, a little fine, a little lighter in the wallet. Yeah.
I remember when Tony Siragusa dumped Rich Gannon on his head in an AFC title game, and it was an ugly scene. And Gannon kept playing, but he wasn't effective. The league has got to do that, unfortunately, to protect the skilled players.
None of us would get up if somebody like Siragusa fell on us.
Well, if you think about it too, though, if the quarterbacks instinctively know that they're not going to get slammed that hard, they're going to be a lot more effective because they're not going to be as fearful, don't you think?
But I will say quarterbacks are tougher than we think, though. I mean, they're prepared.
Well, you have Roethlisberger. I mean, big guy like him, or even Tebow.
I think any football player that goes out there and sacrifices has got to be a little crazy. And those guys are tough. I mean, there's not a single football player out there who plays in the NFL or college, for that matter, who's not a tough guy. I mean, I've heard George Atkinson back in the day say, Lynn Swann was soft. He couldn't take a hit. Well, maybe he couldn't take a hit like George Atkinson would like him to take a hit, but he could take some hits.
Well, if you're going to be out there, then you're fresh meat.
Yeah.
Well, I went to school with Stacy Bailey. Do you remember him?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Stacy, great guy, but he only weighed about 175 pounds, and he was a wide receiver.
Dripping wet with his shorts on.
That's it. So the funny thing is, if you ever watched him, I mean, he can only go down the sidelines. I mean, because otherwise he would just get decimated. But that guy had a 48-inch vertical leap.
Wow.
In fact, his claim to fame, I think, is the famous Bartkowski Hail Mary, where Billy White Juice Johnson gets the ball and runs through a few San Francisco tacklers, and then it gets in the end zone for the winning score. Stacy was the guy who tipped the ball to him.
Oh my God! I remember that game. That was in the
early '80s. Yeah, I think that was Bartkowski's big claim to fame.
Yeah.
The Niners.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly. And so Stacy was the guy who tipped it. But I think one time I saw him go down the middle. He goes down the side and he cuts into the middle, and I started kind of cringing, going, "Don't get hit! Every bone in your body's going to get broken."
We remember Darryl Stingley so well. Tatum hit him, and it was a clean hit. I was at that game. It was an exhibition game, and it was a clean hit. And unfortunately, he just hit him in the right spot. The poor guy never recovered, and he died a few years ago, and he was in a wheelchair the rest of his life. Very sad.
Remember Ricky Waters? He went to the Philadelphia Eagles, went across the middle, got alligator arms because he wouldn't go up there.
Oh, yeah. I love that expression, alligator arms.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears here for a little bit. At what point should a player hang it up and retire?
Only the player knows that one.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's so easy for us to just sit on the sidelines and judge. When it's over for you. But I think an athlete knows in his or her mind. I guess when you either you don't have the heart for it, you just don't want to get up and just go through the pains of the reps and the practice and do it anymore, or you just feel in your heart that, hey, I just can't play at a high level anymore.
It's so tough too because this is what you've been doing your whole life, and all of a sudden you have to walk away from it when you're still relatively young. In your early 30s, sometimes late 20s. It's got to be difficult. You hear stories about guys who retire from pro sports and they go into depression and they lose money and their life falls apart and they divorce their wives. Whatever happens, You know, I mean, I could cite some stories. You know, Jim Tyrer of the Kansas City Chiefs, great offensive lineman. Once he got out of the game, he just was never the same and ended up killing himself.
When I do an interview, it's one of my favorite questions to ask of an ex-athlete. When did you know that it was over?
Wow. Well, you got to think that these guys, like you said, they retire on average, 35, 36, maybe 40. I mean, you got a lot of years to go.
If they're lucky, they retire when they're 35, 36. Most of them have to get out of the game when they're 26, 27. The average length of a pro athlete's career is about 4 years, 3 years sometimes, 3 to 4 years. So think about that.
I'd like to know the percentage of the guys who leave on their own terms versus the guys who still think they can play and are let go.
Well, that's a good point, because I was making in my mind just certain guys who retired pretty much at the top of their game.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Jim Brown, Gale Sayers. Now, he had gotten hurt, but then he came back. Ted Williams. So these guys, you kind of look at them and you say, it's really sad when you see these guys who stay around a little bit too long.
Willie Mays.
I know.
That was so tragic to watch him.
To New York.
Yeah, stumbling in the outfield during the World Series against the Oakland A's. And yet, the interesting thing about Willie, his last base hit as a major leaguer was the game-winning hit in Game 2 of the World Series in Oakland. So, hey, it wasn't all bad.
Yeah.
Well, what a way to go. Hey, Bruce, you had a couple of guys on at the Foghorn Theater in Mill Valley, one of which was Biff Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I asked him that question about when did you know it was over, and he had an interesting story because he's one of the guys that thought he could still play, and I believe he had a 2 or 3 hit game his last game, and he felt like, hey, I see, and they, I think they sent him down or they released him or something like that. It was just, sad.
Well, he was a good player, not a great player, but the problem is, unless you're even if you're a superstar, sometimes they push you out the door.
Well, sometimes, we all watch sports. I mean, obviously you guys are there a lot, but you look at some of these people and you go, how did they even get to this level? Because some of them they don't seem to have it day after day after day.
Some of them are very inconsistent. It's interesting watching Hunter Pence of the San Francisco Giants, who's the most awkward-looking athlete person, and yet the guy is a great ball player. He really is. He plays with such passion, and he's fun to watch because he's so unique. I think that's why he's a fan favorite.
I will say this, though. In the case of Hunter Pence, is he not in a contract year?
I don't know.
It's interesting. When you're in the last year of contract, just how much you turn on those numbers. I think if you check, I think Hunter Pence is up at the end of this year.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that has to play into it. Certainly plays into it. I think those of us in the media are more skeptical and more because we look at it that way. We're looking at the money they're making. That's become such a big story, and I wish it weren't, but it's the reality.
I've never seen anybody throw a ball, from the outfield the way he does. It's kind of this weird sort of sidearm, and he's probably the only guy who's ever hit the ball 3 times with one swing.
That was a wild swing.
That was strange. The World Series,
That was very strange. And in fact, you were talking about the ways that professional athletes, know it's time to retire, and the 3 things that they pointed out here in this article was, A, your body says no.
Mm-hmm.
2, you're no longer good, and 3, your desire to play has vanished. So there were a couple things I thought were kind of interesting here, where a football player can't play the game without feeling like an 80-year-old quadriplegic. Now, I've played some basketball just for fun pickup games, right? And it's amazing how the next week I'm just so sore. And that was when I,
Are you still playing?
No.
Now imagine doing that every day.
I know.
Imagine doing it for night games right after day games. I mean, and in football, what do you think, Bruce? It's like being in a head-on collision, like 50, 60 times a game.
It's like being in a car wreck.
Yeah.
It really is. Once a week, you're in a major car wreck.
That's why I know a lot of these guys, they hate those Thursday games. It's just not enough time to recuperate from the previous Sunday.
And I know the subject you brought up, Edward, about when you know it's over and all this kind of stuff. How about being the guy, the veteran presence on the team, and then you got a younger guy, rookie maybe, on there, and everybody knows they're there to replace you.
Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. Alex Smith goes down with injury, and he never gets his job back. And he was having the best year of his career.
Okay, we're going to pick this
Wally
up.
Pip.
We're going to pick this up right after the commercial break. All right, so here's our first first trivia question. Kobe Bryant now wears number 24. What was his number before that? The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Their website is lighthouseforfun.com. Call 888-666-8255 888-660-4495. That's 888-660-4495.
What's that number again?
Wait, Kobe Bryant now wears number 24. What was his number before that? 888-660-4495. Make sure you include your name, your email address, speak slowly, and spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that dial because Sports Econ 101 will be right back.
Having a clue.
Guys are right.
Having a clue.